guest visiting here. Not, excuse me, not to diminish her importance by saying guest. She's really not a guest. She's one of the foremost disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. And distinguishing characteristics of this wonderful Vaishnava is that she was one of the first devotees to help spread Krishna consciousness from New York to California, from California to England, and subsequently around the world. Yesterday we were very fortunate to hear her describe the first visit of the ISKCON devotees to Vrindavan, the holy Dham of Vrindavan. She gave many details, and we heard that she was always doing something, cooking for Prabhupada, and so many wonderful things for Srila Prabhupada. And ISKCON is very fortunate that we have, yes? I can hear you. Come. I was looking for you. We would share this opportunity to glorify your senior most God sister. And Prabhupada blessed her with so many wonderful services. You know, I'll leave that work for you. Come on. So anyway, I'm going to have Sita Niti share a little bit in this welcoming of Malati Prabhu.
Spontaneous Hatiki. We lost our broadcast man, so I'm trying to do two. That's why you see me running up and down the steps all the time. A lot of people watching on the internet. Anyways, I guess more importantly, we can say also one of the governing body commissioners for ISKCON. So, very big service. ISKCON is in itself just in its mission, what it's trying to accomplish, ever changing and trying to improve and also continue the spreading of this mission. Srila Prabhupada has established in the West with the aim of fulfilling the desire of his Guru Maharaj and Janmastami and Prabhu. I guess just to highlight also, I always think about, we hear pioneers in the beginning of ISKCON. You got to realize it's not like what we're experiencing now. Already D's are here, Kirtan is here, Nice Prasad is here. So, it's just Srila Prabhupada, which in itself I guess is very attractive. I've never read any books. And a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifices in order to get this movement, get this name chanting Hare Krishna established throughout the world. Every time you hear Govindan prayers, actually she's associated with that. So that was a very big monumental achievement in ISKCON, bringing George Harrison and establishing ISKCON in London. If you think about it, Prabhupada's godbrothers went to England, big sannyasis learned it, and when they left, it was pretty much the same thing. The beat was the point. And all of a sudden, here goes Malati coming from. Previous to that, she was, those days people live a very simple life. That principle of simple living had took hold. And then she was living practically as a forest ranger. And she heard about Prabhupada from one of her friends, became devotee, and they went to London, and now we see the result. The Queen of England is even visiting our school. So monumental achievement, historic, and they're going to be remembered for the next 10,000 years for sure. So again, let's welcome her, Grace Malati, Ki.
Hare Krishna.
Before we begin this evening, I would like to ask for a moment of silent prayer from each of you on behalf of a very terrible tragedy that occurred in Wisconsin today. At a Sikh Gurdwara, there was one gunman who came in and shot 6 people, killed them, and then shot himself. And these are devotees of the Lord, very honorable people, and of course great suffering in their hearts right now. So, as fellow devotees on the path of truth, if we could take a moment to pray to Lord Krishna to help ease their suffering at this moment. So this week is a very auspicious occasion for all devotees of the Lord, particularly the Vaishnavas, who will be celebrating the advent of Lord Krishna this coming Thursday. And just like in the world when they have Christmas, all people are aware, not only just the Christians, but the whole world is knowing that. And in the same way, Janmastami is an auspicious occasion for the whole world, not just for the Vaishnavas or the Hindus, if you will, in order to Lord Krishna. And on the following day, Friday, it is the appearance day of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. So it is a very incredibly, wonderfully intense 2-day celebration. First, the Supreme Lord Himself comes, and then He sends His pure devotee, who mercifully came to save all of us. So I was remembering the glories of Srila Prabhupada, because without his glorious manifestation coming to the U.S., I can't even imagine what many of us in this room might be doing or thinking at this point in time. Bringing the message of Lord Chaitanya in its pure form, unadulterated, and fearlessly passing it out to one and all. I was thinking about the wonderful Godbrother. He put together a little offering once called Srila Prabhupada's beautiful transcendental qualities. And I thought I would just start by reading 2 of these qualities in remembrance of Srila Prabhupada. So one of Srila Prabhupada's wonderful qualities was that he was sane. And nowadays, when you have tragedies such as this would occur today, sanity has a very poignant meaning. You'll remember, those of you who are familiar with Srila Prabhupada's teachings and the books that he's written, one of his early articles, an early booklet, was entitled, "Who is Crazy?" At one point in the 60s, many young people had turned to the hippie lifestyle, an alternative lifestyle, as a way of trying to find meaning to life. And some of them fell into the Hare Krishna movement during this time after the Krishna movement came. And during that time, it was actually quite easy to have somebody committed to a mental hospital. So many parents were committing their hippie children or their Hare Krishna children. They would put them in a mental hospital as a way to save them from being hippies or save them from being Hare Krishna. And in one case, the doctor examined this one devotee who had been committed to the mental hospital in New York, and he concluded that he wasn't at all crazy. He said he was saner than most people that he knew. But Srila Prabhupada could understand this dynamic, and so he wrote this article. And who is crazy? Those people who live their life without God, ignoring God, or those people who acknowledge God and put God into their life. Actually, God is already into your life, but live their life in such a way they acknowledge the presence of God in their life. Anyway, the living entity in the material world has become mad due to the influence of Maya, our illusion. So in reality, the living entity is an eternal spiritual spark, part and parcel of Krishna. But when one is illusioned he sees himself as the material body, and we forget our intimate relationship with the Lord, and we fail to see how everything around us is emanating from the absolute truth of Sri Krishna. So Vijayatma, he wrote, Srila Prabhupada was never under such misconceptions. It means he was eternally liberated. However, as evidenced by his pure devotional service, out of natural humility, he never promoted his own elevated status. But once, when pressed by his disciples for information concerning his position, he modestly replied, there was never a moment when I have not thought about Krishna in this life. Srila Prabhupada's unwavering remembrance of Krishna provided a perfectly effulgent example of spiritual sanity, and by faithfully serving his lotus feet, we will soon become free from our material illusion. So the second quality I'll read, faultless. So due to his being situated in the internal spiritual energy of Krishna, Srila Prabhupada was faultless. He was free from the four material defects, namely the tendency to commit mistakes, to be an illusion, to cheat others, or to possess imperfect senses. And because Srila Prabhupada performed his devotional activities in a mood of full surrender to Lord Krishna, he was guided by the hand of Lord Krishna. So in this way, he was free from mistakes. And his freedom from illusion was shown by the fact that throughout his preaching work, millions of souls were enlightened with spiritual knowledge. And by sacrificing his own bodily comforts for the service of mankind, he just demonstrated his complete freedom from the tendency to cheat and exploit others. And finally, his eyes, being smeared with the ointment of love of God, were fully spiritual, as were the rest of his senses, which were always engaged in the transcendental loving service of Sri Krishna. So I'll give a little personal example with regards to not making mistakes. It was in 1967, it was in San Francisco, and he had written a letter to India, and he requested one disciple to take it to the post office. The disciple took the letter and he looked and he saw in the corner of the envelope there was a little slit, a little hole. So he brought the letter back and said, Swamiji, there's a hole in the envelope. You know, Prabhupada said, that is all right. And he was trying to argue with him that, well, but there's a hole in the envelope. You can't send it like this. And Srila Prabhupada was not in a mood of arrogance. Actually, it was a very humble mood. He taught his young disciple a very good lesson. And he said, know that all I do is perfect. So Krishnadas was a little surprised. But then Prabhupada provided the explanation. He said, this letter is going to India. If they see, and remember, 1966, if they see something from America, they'll think there may be money inside, and they'll just open it up, and it'll be lost. So I've left this little slit so they can see there is no money inside. So everything he did was perfect, and he didn't make mistakes, and he wasn't in illusion, and he never cheated anyone. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So in August 16, 1968, I was on my way to London with my husband and my daughter, who was 6 weeks old, and 2 other couples, Mukunda, Janaki, and Janana and Gurudas. And we observed Sri Krishna Janmastami with His Divine Grace, and then the following day, the 17th, of course, was his Vyasa Puja ceremony. So the year before, 1967, was for many, it was at least for the West Coast wave, which is, I was from that era, our first Janmastami. And we didn't know so much except that you had to fast till midnight, which was, you know, in itself quite a challenge to most of us. On the first fasting we did, the first serious fasting, was on the Gurpurnim of 67. And Srila Prabhupada explained we should try to fast if we can fully till sunrise, till sunset. And sensing that it might be difficult for some of the students at least, if not everybody, he said if you need some, if you require, you can take a little sugar candy. Now in India you have this mystery called mystery, like rock sugar. You know, but and we didn't really know what that meant, but we understood it was sugar and water. So in America they have, I don't know if they still have them, but they used to have these little packets of sugar water candy called Lifesavers. And the Lifesavers you get would have flavor of lemon and strawberry and orange, lime, whatever. But they're made with sugar and water. So we went out in advance and got our Lifesavers. Thinking in case we can't handle this fast, we have our Lifesavers. And they said that you must, you know, you can drink a little fruit juice. So one way or the other, we got through that first fast, which was really only up until the sunset. So now we're facing the whole day and into the night. But by then we had some, you know, practice chanting, we'd been taking prasadam. So it was easier than we had anticipated. In August of 68, now we were, you could say, a little more seasoned. But in addition to be there present, you know, in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, added so much more potency to the moment. So everybody, including Srila Prabhupada, was together in the temple room throughout the day. There had been cooking going on and kirtan, and just kind of activities geared towards getting ready for the evening. And I remember that people from India, which weren't so many people of Indian origin in Canada or America at that time, were coming in, stopping in the temple to pay their respects. And that evening there was quite a number of people from India that were there with us, and everybody was dressed up very nicely. So Srila Prabhupada spoke, addressed the audience. And first he chanted the Chintamani prayers, and then we chanted back Chintamani Prakara Sadhana, so, you know, then Vedam Kavantam, Maloshanjaka, Agniyasa, Sakayan, Advaitam Ajutan, so verse by verse he would chant, then we would chant back. And then he spoke on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, this verse number 9, Janma Karmatame Mam Evam Yogeti Tattvata. Uttva Deham Punarjanma Naiti Mamiti Saraduna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So he made a point, he spoke, that whoever tries to understand these two points, he said, taking his birth and his activities. He said, this means that the personality of the Godhead is not Niskriya. Niskriya means without activities, but he has activities. And Arjuna, he was trying to understand, he couldn't understand, you know, what type of activities the Lord has. And Prabhupada made a point that these two things, they will help us to understand the Lord. And he was expressing that after quitting the body, when one quits the body, the Lord is saying that upon leaving the body, he doesn't take birth again in this material world if he knows this transcendental nature of my appearance and my activities, that upon quitting the body, one doesn't take birth again in the material world. So Prabhupada pointed out here that sometimes people take this point of leaving the body, Panihati Dham, that they think it means to become vanquished, or maybe merge into the absolute. But Prabhupada said, no, that is not correct. That Krishna says, Mameti, that he does not come to the material world, he comes to me. Not that one is vanquished. One is not vanquished. Mameti, he comes to me. So again he said, simply by understanding this nature of appearance, disappearance, this should be understood. It's divyam, it's not ordinary. Not ordinary. It's not like us. So then he was explaining from Bhagavad Gita how Krishna remembers all of his birth, but we do not. And that Arjuna was questioning Krishna, how is it you spoke this science millions and trillions of years ago to the sun god? So he said, Krishna was thinking, well, here's my contemporary, he was my friend. Arjuna was thinking about Krishna, he was my contemporary, he was my friend. So how can it be that, we're here together now, but he's saying, yes, but I spoke this to the sun god. So then Krishna, of course, he counseled him. Yes, he said, I have taken both you and I have taken many, many births. But here's the difference. I remember them all, but you do not, O Arjuna. So,
Salt.
it's like blasting my ears. Which is saying a lot because I'm deaf. So, then Prabhupada was saying, so there's the 8,400,000 species of life, and we are cycling around, now it's a big deal, recycling. This is a buzzword. We're recycling ourselves around, and we can't remember any of them. But Krishna, he says, Krishna is not like that. And he says how to understand, how to know the truth, tattva, how to know the truth, not superficially, but to know the truth in fact. And there is only one way, which is through devotion. So then he cites a verse from Bhagavad Gita, if one offers me a fruit, a flower, a leaf, with devotion, I will accept it. So then Prabhupada said, a fruit, yes, you will eat it. Yes, he eats. And then he says, and he sees, he has senses, so he's seeing, he's eating. And then he gave this, he mentioned how Lord Brahma was just born from the abdomen of Garbhodakas. He lay there in the causal ocean, and he came up from the lotus flower. And Lakshmi was just sitting there by the side watching. She wasn't doing anything to assist. He said, now here, if we want to have children, it takes cooperation between male and female. So the Krishna is not like that. Sarva Sakyamana, he requires no help. No, Krishna eats. And in 1967, we had the first deities in ISKCON, which was Lord Jagannath, the merciful form of Lord Jagannath. Up until that time, we had been offering everything, but in a very, immature way, you could say. We would just bring all the pots into the temple room, sit, someone that side, someone this side, and we'd put the pots down the center, and then everybody would just bow down, we'd ring a bell and chant, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. So it wasn't a formal offering like it is now. But when Lord Jagannath came, Srila Prabhupada informed us, now Jagannath is here, and you must feed him. Whatever you cook must be offered to him on a plate, his own plate, with a goblet and 2 bowls and a spoon. He was very precise. So then one of the young men raised his hand. He goes, how does he eat? Prabhupada looks at him. He looked at him and he said, that you cannot understand. He said, but he can eat with his eyes. He can eat with his elbow. He can eat with his knee. That you cannot understand. Because the senses of the Supreme Lord are not dependent upon any particular function. Everything is interchangeable. So he eats, he sees, he can reproduce, just like how did Lord Nrsingadev, we just chanted the prayers of Nrsingadev, he appeared from a pillar. The Supreme Lord appeared from a pillar. You can say, well, who's Nrsingadev's mother? Well, that broken pillar over there. You can see there is, that stump is there. You can go see that place where Lord Nrsinga appeared at Ahola, South India. Which is what the place is said to be the base of the pillar, where it was holding the pillar. You can see that nowadays. So there's Lord Nrsinga's mother. But he said, then he was going on, he said, just like the sun is rising from the east. So you do not say, well, the sun is, the mother is the mother of the sun is the east. No, he says, it is not like that. The east is not the mother of the sun. So, the process is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhakti Amam, by devotion. Everything offered by devotion. And Krishna will accept. And we will understand. In other words, these activities purify us, and then we're able to understand the appearance and disappearance and the activities of the Supreme Lord. And then we begin to see the Supreme Lord as a transcendental person. So, then he made a nice point. He says, Janmastami, it is under the bhakti category. It is an activity of devotion, observing Janmastami. Just like he gave a nice statement that book distribution, prasadam distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, deity worship, and festivals. So these 5 things combined, he said, will defeat the pernicious means deadly, effects of the age of Kali. So Janmastami, it's wonderful, it's a festival. There's prasadam distribution going on, book distribution, all the activities are there, chanting, kirtan, etc. So it's an activity of bhakti. And it's for everyone. Then he explained, so he said, now it's 10 o'clock. So he said, for the next 2 hours, we will be celebrating with kirtan. Then he said, kirtan means chanting and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. He said, this is also kirtan. He said, just like Vyasaki, Sukadeva Goswami, that he achieved the highest perfection by reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. And so like out of the 9 processes of devotion, each Prabhupada pointed out, you can all 9, or you can just do 1. And if one is done nicely, then one can achieve this perfection. So the process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Bhagasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyamakam, Nivedanam. Then he was saying, so Sukadeva Goswami was by reciting, And then Maharaj Pariksit by hearing, and he gave the example of Prahlad by meditating. So just one, he says, are all nine. So I said, now it is 10 o'clock, so we will be hearing and chanting, chanting through Kirtan and reciting Srila Bhagavatam. And then he requested some of the students, the devotees, and some of the guests to speak their realizations on Krishna. And I was thinking that would be a really wonderful format because everybody was involved. I was reading some of the, keeping in mind this is 1968, so the most senior-most person was barely a year old. Almost maybe, some over a year old, but very new to the process of devotional service. But it was wonderful to read the words of the devotees because you realized that Prabhupada's formula was so perfect. And he told us right from the beginning to go out and preach. We'd say, how can we preach? We don't know anything. He said, simply listen to me and repeat what you have heard. And of course we had the first volume of Bhagavatam. So we could see by hearing what these young students had to say that they had been listening to Srila Prabhupada. And now they were very nicely repeating. And that was a very wonderful Janmastami. And then the next day was his Vyasa Puja. And, everybody knows what it's like. You're up all night fasting, then you break your fast, and then you're cleaning up the temple and the kitchen, until around. And it's time for Mongol Arati. And, if anybody's left standing, and then it all starts all over again, the fasting, It's like inconceivable how Krishna made that arrangement. Really amazing. But again, we remember how with great, being a lot younger then, it was somewhat easier to, go without so much sleep or eating. And then it was noontime, and we all came into the temple room. We had been cooking in the huge kitchen. I'm saying that jokingly. The kitchen at the temple in Montreal was a really narrow affair. Hardly room for one people to speak of anything, any more than that. The temple had been a former bowling alley, so it hadn't been, equipped for living situations. So somehow we managed to make a opulent feast with so many preparations. And this big tray, I remember it was a big oval tray, was brought out and offered to Srila Prabhupada. And he looked at it with just this childlike smile on his face, just see what they were bringing me. And I had a gulab jamun. He picked up this gulab jamun and he took a bite and some of the juice came squirting out. And then he motioned for me to come forward. I was sitting quite close because the next day we were leaving for London, and I just wanted to be as, close as I could because we didn't know what would happen once we left the country. And I had this newborn kid, so he called me forward and he handed me this gulab jamun that he'd bitten into. And he said, he indicated it was for the baby. And I was kind of shocked because we were kind of indoctrinated. I was the only kid in the movement. Well, there was one other child. My daughter was the first one conceived and born in the movement. There was another little girl, Subhadra, that had been born previously. Her mom was already pregnant when she came. So we didn't know a lot about, things, but we had heard that only feed breast milk up until 6 months. So now he's asked me to, giving me this gulab jamun, and my stupid little mind was like, what do I do with this, And then suddenly I realized, wait a minute, it's made with milk. Just put it by her mouth, baby suck, and she'll get that juice, and it's just been touched by the lips of a pure devotee. My mind got back to order again. So I put the gulab jamun by her mouth, and she just started sucking right away. But that was a very sweet exchange. Before the feast, though, he it was before the feast, he, again, he asked students to speak. This is on the Janmastami, he asked the students and some of the guests. But this was just basically his disciples. And so again, none of us were prepared. We didn't really have a great understanding of Vyasa Puja at that point. But still, the sentiments were there and were developing within our hearts. So somehow or other we were able to say something. Maybe not with much eloquence, but with the eloquence that we were able to muster up and with the honesty that was there. So I wanted to just tell a little about a recent adventure I had. Because everything in ISKCON is related to Prabhupada, whether he was personally present in any particular situation or not. So it was in, I guess it was in May, late May. It was, during Festival Inspiration, I was hearing some devotees talking about they were going to go to Ghana. So this is West Africa. And these devotees were from Ghana, so they were going back, and they hadn't been there for a while. And they were really excited. They were talking, there was going to be a Rath Yatra festival, and there was going to be a memorial for Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And these devotees are some of the most powerful kirtan devotees, enthusiastic kirtan devotees I know. I started thinking, wow, imagine a whole country full of people like this, And I was listening to them, I said, I'd like to go too. And they looked, they goes, Mother Malati, you come to Ghana? I said, yeah, I'd come. And the next thing I know, just like overnight I was going to Ghana. So we left we flew out of New York City on July 1st. Myself, my god sister Krishna Nandini, and her mother, who's also our god sister, Bhumata, who's 85 years old. And already had gone Indrani, who's 80 years old. She's a disciple of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, who lives in Malati, and Antaryami, who went along as an assistant. And then Grace Prabhu, who's our temple president from Columbus, and we were the little group of Westerners. And then the devotees from Ghana had already gone over earlier. And some people had tried to stop me from going because they said, it's too austere, you might get sick, you might this, you might that. I was like, come on, I'm just going to Rath Yatra and, in memorial for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. After all, when he left, he asked us, his god sisters and god brothers, to please, we should pay some attention to his disciples, and here's an opportunity to do that service. So then I heard from Tsiki, I happened to mention to him, and he told me he'd been over there for some time. So I was enthusiastic to go, we all were. And when I landed, got off the plane, we flew a plane that was called Royal Moroccan, but the royal part they should have just left off. They should have just called it Moroccan Airlines. There wasn't even soap in the bathroom. That was such a cheap. It wasn't cheap to fly, but the airline was really cheap. Anyways, we got off the airline, I didn't know what to expect, but it was like throwback in time. Like when I first got off the plane in Bombay in 1970, and there was just this corrugated building with like a unit, a hangar type of thing. I mean, that was the airport. I can't even remember if there was actually a dirt floor or pavement at that point in time. I mean, now you go to Bombay and it's just this big, huge marble air-conditioned palace, but there were the fans were, I remember the electricity, there were fans, but the electricity was off, so the fans weren't even going, So it was kind of like that in Ghana. It was pretty basic airport. And then all of a sudden the devotees were there. These devotees have just this incredible enthusiasm for kirtan. You just can't imagine. It's just like so blissful. And the country itself is what you could say greatly underdeveloped in terms of the Western concept of development. Unfortunately, that'll probably change pretty quickly because I just read they found gas there. So I can imagine they're going to move in and, you know, anyways, but right now it's just pretty simple. And the things that I observed about the country is because it's so undeveloped, there's not all this like prepackaged stuff, there's not all this, there's like, it's quite clean because there's not all this trash because they don't have anything. And the other thing is their diet was also quite simple, like it was about 80% rice. You'd have it, you know, some form of rice in the morning, and then they didn't eat in the afternoon, and in the evening be another form of rice with some, maybe plantain and this cassava root, big root product. But, and you know, you didn't see mounds of halwa, you didn't see it at all, you know, they just, and nobody seemed to even, I mean, they were so happy that there was no, like, not even one cumin seed or any holly or, you know, no spices at all. And the temple in Accra, which was the capital of the city there, they didn't even have a refrigerator. So they had, their kitchen was like a piece of, you know, corrugated. The temple was very nice. It was within the last decade constructed. It's really nice, but still simple. But the kitchen was just like some bamboo poles with a corrugated roof of iron, and then some fire, and a couple of fire pits with big pots. And they'd be out there cooking, and there's no walls. And then these, like, I'd see these chickens walking up, and this kind of walking between the pots. But they just, you know, they loved to chant, you know. And so they had the, another thing is, like, you think with that diet, you know, like, maybe there was compromised health because there wasn't a lot of fresh produce and stuff. It was like at the end, there was like the end, they had like mangoes and pineapple there, but it was at we were there, it was like rainy season last month, that was when I was there. And there were still a few mangoes, so somehow these mangoes were like, I've never seen, they were like this, huge, gigantic, juicy mangoes. It was amazing. And lots and lots of pineapples. And a few bananas were around. but not, you know, they didn't, the devotees just basically were having rice. And then they would make this, what they call soup, which maybe you cut up one string beef per 5 people and add something else and make it into a sauce and put it over the rice. And then after a couple of days or so, maybe 3 or 4 days, I noticed that I made potatoes. I said, do you have potatoes here? And they go, oh no, they're very, you know, they're very expensive. So, you know, what we look at, the common lowly potato was like a luxury item for them, at least at that point. I don't know, maybe it was the season, I'm not sure. Anyways, I noticed everybody was quite healthy. That was the thing. So they didn't have a lot of stuff, but the country was clean. Nobody keeping, you know, huge trash piles, no landfills. And, you know, you didn't see kids running around with snot coming out of the nose or runny eyes. All the kids were really, like, vibrant and, you know, healthy looking. And people walked a lot. I mean, there are automobiles there for a certain segment, but, you know, the average person doesn't have an automobile, and they don't think anything of walking 2 to 5 kilometers for anything. They just do it, you know. So, you know, this type of exercise tends to keep people a little more fit. When we had the Rath Yatra, it was in another city, and Kumasi. And the Rath Yatra started out with a full blast kirtan. I mean, it wasn't like one of these building up, it just like, atom bomb kirtan. And it went on for 4 hours, like up and down, there were some hills up and down and through these marketplaces and all. And I mean, there was no, you know, if we stopped, it was only to like increase the kirtan. You know, 4 hours. And then we get to I heard we were going to get to a park, and I was like really looking forward to the park. And we got to the park, and there was not like one tree. There was just like, you know, like everything else, pretty simple, bare place, and they put up some tents to make a few shade. And kirtan was like still went on, you know, like super solid kirtan. And then they had some, you know, what you might expect at a Rath Yatra, some Bharatanatyam dancing. But then they also had some from North Ghana, some special type of dancing, which they put together to kirtan, which was very attractive. And a big crowd of people were coming around, just, you know, really eating it up, just really watching and observing the whole affair. And then, of course, they had some prasadam, which, as you might imagine, was a rice preparation. And, you know, after like hours and hours of dancing and chanting, I mean, you're very happy to honor prasadam under any circumstance. So you're not thinking, hey, where's the halava? Because there wasn't any, you know, like, we couldn't have probably imagined a feast without some major sweets, you know, but they just had these blissful rice preparations and everybody was really happy with it. So, but I was reflecting, you know, how it must have been like, if they don't have much now, well, another thing is the roads. I had to give new names to the roads because they were unbelievable. They were like the road from hell, torture alley, break your back avenue, and I called one the Back to Godhead Road. We went from this one city, we went to this other place, and every kilometer there was a sign that said, 29 people killed here, 32 people died here, 9 people died there. And I was like, oh my God, you know? Because apparently they like to speed when they get the opportunity, not thinking about which side of the, you know, a little bit like India, which side of the road they're on and who's in their way. And anyway, but I was, you know, thinking, well, this is how it is now. It's, you know, very, materially speaking, minimal. What was it like 30 years ago when Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj first stepped foot there and started preaching? And there's some really solid devotees there. And I was asking every devotee, like, well, how did you come? How did you find out about this? And every single one said, well, somebody gave me a book, or I found a book somewhere. I mean, everyone. And this one devotee was telling me how he'd found this book, and he was just so attracted. And unusually, he came from an educated family, so it was, you know, not so many educated people at that point in time. But his family was somewhat educated, and they had come in contact with a Swami and Impersonalist gurus, and they had actually become initiated by this person. But he read, you know, this book, one of Prabhupada's books. No, it was one of Bhakti Tirtha's books. And he became really attracted. He said, well, I want to meet this person. So he wrote. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj wrote back to him and he said, well, I'll be coming to your country in such and such a time, arrange for a meeting. But as it turned out, this person had to be in Nigeria, which is it's the next country over at that time, so misleading him. So they kept trying, and somehow or other they didn't meet. In the meantime, he had a little business, and he was describing his business was on the end of a road, and there was nothing else on the road. So anybody who was coming on that road had to be going to meet him at his business, otherwise there wasn't anything there. He was closing up one night, and he was going to his car, and he sees his car coming down the road, and he knew there was no other appointments. So it was a printing business. No other appointments, so he walked up to the car, and he said, yeah, can I help you? And he goes, we're lost. And he goes, well, I know that. You know? And he looks in and he sees a car full of people in orange robes. They were Hare Krishnas. And they said, well, we're looking for this. It was a printing company. So what do you want to do? Well, we want to print some books of our guru in Ghana. And he goes, oh, well, maybe I can help you because I have a printing company. Why don't you come to my house and we can talk about it? So they said, okay. They came to his house, and there were 7 of them in his vehicle. And he put up 7 chairs. He had them all sit down because he was really interested in, what was going on. So he goes to each person, what is your name? And, how did you come in contact with this? So he's going down, and he's just getting to the 7th person. His brother comes in with him, and he had some milk ready to drink. And the brother looks at these, he looks up and he sees this one person, and he just drops the tray of milk. And so this devotee's has no clue, his brother's not generally a clumsy person, what is going on? So he just kind of ignored that his brother just dropped all this milk all over, and he went to the last person, and he goes, so what is your name, and how did you come? And he goes, well, my name is Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And then he's just he couldn't believe it, but I said, I've been trying to, I'm the one who's been writing to you. And what happened, his brother had seen a picture. He hadn't seen a picture of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. His brother had seen a picture. And his brother walked in and saw, here's Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj in our house. He was so stunned he dropped the milk. So subsequently, this devotee gave up his impersonal viewpoint, and he took Diksha initiation from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And now he's about 63 years old now. He has an independent radio station, TV station, and produces many Krishna conscious programs, as well as other programs, and many, social commentary type of programs. And we taped 3 shows while we were there. And then they showed after we left. We did it the night we were leaving. It was we were in the studio till 11:30 at night, and we had to be at the airport at 3 in the next morning. But then we got the message that they'd shown the programs, and they were big hit. They had thousands of viewers. Amazing. And one of the ladies who'd been on the program, the one from Malati, Indrani, she stayed a week after we left. Actually, it was 10 days after we left. So whenever she'd go out, people were recognizing her from the TV show and really appreciating it. So, a wonderful way to help in spread Krishna consciousness, according to one's means. And then another wonderful devotee, his name is Srivas, and he's the president of the temple in Accra. 30 years ago, for anyone to go to college was practically unheard of in that country. Even now, it's not, the average person doesn't go even to high school, even to school. It's just a certain class who do and have the means to. And this person was set to go to medical school. His family, not just his immediate family, but extended family, had pulled the resources together to, they set their sight on him, that he would be the one to get educated and, save the family and, bring them out of their material situation. So somehow or other, he's ready to go to medical school, and he finds a book. And then he found the people behind the book, and he was spending some time with the devotees in between going to medical school. He's going out in book distribution. And they went to one of the neighboring city that had a small temple there, a little outpost temple, and to pick up more books. And the devotee said, tomorrow, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is coming, so you have to wait. You can't read because he's coming tomorrow. So they said, okay, we'll spend the night. And the next day he was brought before Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He was introduced here, so-and-so, he's going to become a doctor, but he's spending time, he's distributing books. And Bhakti Tirtha looks him in the eye and goes, so you're going to become a doctor? He said, why didn't you become a doctor of the soul? This body no matter what you do, is bound to fail and die. Why don't you save the person and become a doctor of the soul? So he said he was stunned. That was a really direct request, you know. And he just, you know, he left the darshan and he went out, and the first person he saw was like the head of that little center. He goes, he just asked me to become a doctor of the soul. I don't know what to do. What should I do? And he goes, wow, that's amazing. He gave you that order. You should go shave up right now. And then he went to, you know, his mind was kind of reeling because he really, you know, he was strongly attracted to the philosophy. And he goes to this other person who's like a senior type of devotee, and he goes, he just told me I should become a doctor of the soul. I don't know what to do. And the person goes, wow, he gave you that order, you should shave up. So now he's like really perplexed, so he goes to the person, the Sankirtan leader, and he just says, he told me I should become a doctor of the soul. And the person goes, wow, he gave you that order? You should shave up. 1, 2, 3 in a row. So he went back to his little room where he was staying, and he was just really, you know, praying on what should I do. Suddenly just said he felt complete clarity come over him. So he went and he found the head of the temple, and he said, I'm ready. You can shave me. So he shaved up, he left a little sika, and then they took him back to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and he came in and bowed down, and you know, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj just smiled this huge smile to him, and said, thank you very much for your decision. So this person, he's the temple president in Nakra, and I asked him, because that was like 30 years ago, obviously he didn't go to medical school, I said, have you ever regretted your decision? Was there any time you regretted your decision? He said, you know, it was very hard on my family, and of course they were very distraught and upset. And he said, but on my father's deathbed, so my father had cancer, he died of cancer, and he suffered quite a bit. He said, on his deathbed, he took my hand, he looked me in the eye, and he said, now I understand why you did what you did, and I'm very proud of you. So I saw in Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, the wonderful conviction to serve Krishna without any encumbrance, as handed to him by Srila Prabhupada. So I think if we could just, sometimes we have some hesitancy, we're thinking people might not like it. Nobody likes, you know, nobody likes to be told to give up bad habits. But if we don't tell them, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says it's our duty to disturb Maya. The people are under the influence of illusion, it's our duty to disturb them. Otherwise, they'll just continue in their illusory behavior. So, on this coming occasion, where Srila Prabhupada's appearance day, and coupled with the appearance of Krishna Janmastami, we have the opportunity to reflect on our good fortune, having come to the lotus feet of the pure devotee, and reflect upon how generous he was in spreading Krishna consciousness, and how his disciples have, like Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and others, have taken up the banner so fearlessly, and assisted Srila Prabhupada in fulfilling the mission of Lord Chaitanya, where his name would be chanted in every town and village. Hare Krishna. Anybody have any questions?
I have one. In the 9 processes, is anyone, like Shravan and Kirtanam, is that superior to the other 9, or is it literally that any one
No,
could
Srila
be?
Prabhupada said any one of these 9 processes can liberate one. And generally in Kali Yuga, we're lucky if we can achieve Hare Krishna.